On the 15th of June 1904, a paddle-wheel steamboat set out on a pleasure cruise on New York City's East River. It was New York's worst loss-of-life tragedy in the 20th century, and one that has somehow almost been forgotten.
Get off that bullshit, please.
The General Slocum disaster. The General Slocum disaster.
Please.
The General Slocum disaster wiped out what was left of little Germany.
Trample on
The General Slocum disaster wiped out what was left of little Germany. On the 15th of June 1904, tragedy hit New York City's German community. A disastrous fire aboard the steamship General Slocum had plunged an entire neighborhood into mourning. For the next 2 weeks, hundreds of funerals clogged the streets of Lower Manhattan. More than 1,000 women and children had lost their lives. 100 years later, few remember the historical facts surrounding the disaster aboard the General Slocum. The General Slocum disaster wiped out what was left of little Germany. But now it's a synagogue. The General Slocum disaster wiped out what was left of little Germany. But one landmark of little Germany still remains. The St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church. But now it's a synagogue.
Well, the fire's origin is still, and probably always will be, ultimately a mystery.
At 9:53 a.m., passenger Charles Lang spotted a pub he frequented. At that moment, he thought he overheard someone say fire, although he couldn't see a fire.
It happened just above Hell's Gate, and that's one of the worst areas of that river.
to the gates of hell.
It happened just above Hell's Gate, and that's one of the worst areas of that river, currents and so on.
The SLOCUM was approaching a stretch of the river called Hell Gate, named after the powerful currents and sharp hidden reefs.
Nobody goes through the gate without a great deal of respect for the dangers.
At 9:58, the SLOCUM entered Hell Gate.
As far as we know, this is about where the first indication there might have been a fire aboard, but the captain would not have known it.
And the captain was, in many ways, a convenient scapegoat.
And he died at 98 years of age in a Masonic home.
You can see the white water here on the top, and the whirlpool's actually spinning around. There's always a constant 4 to 5 knot current running around here.
The SLOCUM continued through the S-curve and around Hallett's Point, but already the inferno was rampaging upwards, trapping passengers, who would soon be faced with a terrifying choice: to brave the flames or the churning waters of Hell Gate. Today, jumping into the East River may not seem that threatening, but to most of the passengers on the SLOCUM that day, the waters of Hell Gate were a death sentence.
It's a spiral of death.
But the general SLOCUM tragedy did not end there. The subsequent shockwaves would destroy more lives, causing the New York City neighborhood of Little Germany to disappear forever.
So we had a long life, certainly longer than a lot of people in the SLOCUM.
The general SLOCUM disaster wiped out what was left of Little Germany. The general SLOCUM disaster wiped out what was left of Little Germany. Wiped out what was left of Little Germany. The general SLOCUM disaster wiped out what was left of Little Germany. Wiped out what was left of Little Germany. The general SLOCUM disaster wiped out what was left of Little Germany. Today, the New York City neighborhood has all but forgotten its roots. Shop fronts and ethnicities have changed. But one landmark of Little Germany still remains: the St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church. But now it's a synagogue. Like memories of the SLOCUM and its fate, the inscription has faded. With each passing year, the tragedy grows more distant. Adela Liebenau Wotherspoon died on the 26th of January 2004, peacefully, at the age of 100. The other SLOCUM survivor, Catherine Gallagher Connolly, died at the age of 109 in October 2002. Her life spanned 3 centuries, leaving behind an astonishing legacy of 11 children, 26 grandchildren, 40 great-grandchildren, and 10 great-great-grandchildren. Her life spanned 3 centuries, leaving behind an astonishing legacy of 11 children, 26 grandchildren, 40 great-grandchildren, and 10 great-great-grandchildren.
My simple daddy, don't you know that things go in cycles?
One landmark of Little Germany still remains: the St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church. But now it's a synagogue. Nearby, in Tompkins Square, stands the only other reminder of the general SLOCUM, a lonely monument where every year a wreath is placed on the anniversary of the tragedy.
Fire straight from the pit of hell.
people essentially make the decision that if I don't begin to act more aggressively, then I'm not going to get a life preserver, or I'm not going to get into a boat. And quickly, that panic reached what psychologists call the point of demoralization. Good, Christian, non-violent, decent people begin to pummel each other for life preservers, fight each other for positions along the railing of the boat. The only real effort to fight the fire by the crew on the General Slocum took place within the first 5 minutes. And they ran to the scene of the fire and began to do what they had never done before, which was to actually pull down these old fire hoses, hook them up to the standpipes, and get a stream of water going.